So, why do we need construction prints? What purpose do they serve? Essentially, construction prints are a form of communication. To build anything, we have to start with an idea. And typically those ideas are translated to some sort of sketch. In this course, we're going to have some practice doing that on grid paper and actually go out and do a field sketch before the course is over. But how do we get to this point? How do we get to a magnificent building like this one? Well, it takes a lot of construction prints, a lot of those ideas to be put on paper or, in today's world, in the cloud, so that others can learn how to read them and build from them. In the past, you might have heard something called a blueprint. A blueprint is the old terminology of these construction prints printed on paper. And they actually had the color blue to them, so that's how they got that name. But what they're supposed to do is provide a clear and complete description of an object or structure using these characteristics. They should be accurate, having the correct values, and preferably to scale. Of course, they should be complete, with all locations and dimensions cited. Readable, needs to be legible, correct image sizes, and of course they have to be clear so that they're well organized. To start to read and understand plans, we must first be able to identify the view the drawing represents. There are three basic views in construction prints: what we call the plan view, the elevation view, and the section view. A plan view is an aerial view down on the house or building from above. And as noted here, it depicts a structure or room placement to understand functionality. So if you look at the picture, the print on the right, you can see the dark colored line represents some of the walls of the structure. And of course, some of the lighter colored lines represent some of the interior finishes, furniture, staircases, kitchen sink, etc. The elevation view is a view typically done from the street or some other location on the lot. It would depict the height in the front, the sides, and the rear to understand the vertical measurements and some of the structure of how the building will look. A section view is a cutaway view into the structure. So in this case, imagine a big machete knife that would cut right through the center or portion of the house or structure, and you split it open. What do you see? In this case, they cut that building right through the staircase. So blueprint components include such things as a title block. And a title block would verify the project name and location, architect name, and if there's a project number, page that you're on and the section number associated, the scale of the drawing, and the date of the drawing or revision. So here's a sample title block. And you can see some of the information that was just described. There are 4 things included on a construction print that give detailed instruction on how to make a building: lines, dimension, symbols, and notes. So the lines are solid or dashed, like you see here in this picture. The solid lines again represent, in this case, exterior walls. The dashed lines might represent that there's an opening or something hidden there. In the case of the kitchen, over on the far right-hand side, you can see that there are lower cabinets with a sink and a refrigerator, but the dashed line above those cabinets represents the upper cabinets. Now you can't see them, they're somewhat hidden in this view because the plan view represents a slice of the wall section. So even though we cannot see the cabinets at the slice where this was taken, we know they exist. So we have to draw them as a hidden line or a dashed line. Dimension lines determine the measurement, where the measurement starts and where it stops. And as you can see in this picture, we can see the dimension line, 2 inches, goes from left to right, with what we call tick marks at the end to designate the start and the stopping point. Dimensions drawn here show you feet and inch increments. You can see 10 feet, 5 feet, 3 inches. And those tick marks can be drawn a multitude of different ways, with arrows, with the slashes, or the circles. Scale, as you might imagine, is a representation of something that is different in real life than what is drawn or represented on the paper or the print. The typical scale for a construction print could be 1 inch equals 1 foot, 1/2 inch equals a foot, 1/4 inch and 1/8 inch equals a foot. In the picture on the right, you can see the various scales of cars. So similar to what we see in construction prints, there's a 1/18 scale all the way down to a 1/64 scale. Speaking of scale, these rectangles are the same size, but the scales depict them differently. And just by looking at them, you can tell that they don't look like the same size, but if you check the scale at which they were drawn, they're actually equal. So the picture on the left is a 1/4 inch equals 12 inch scale, and the picture on the right is a 1/4 inch equals 6 inch scale. So essentially we've zoomed in twice to see the picture on the right versus the picture on the left. So that's why it appears to be twice as big. Number 3 are the symbols. And most symbols are fairly obvious. The kitchen sink, the range, the bathtub, etc. Some other symbols are not quite so obvious. Some of the electrical symbols you can see there, switched outlets, ceiling fans, ceiling lights, and dryer. And of course the plumbing side, you can see a water meter, a gas pipe, sanitary waste. Some don't look much like what they're supposed to represent, as mentioned before. If you look at the duplex outlet, the picture of it there, it's obvious that that's an outlet, but the symbol right below it looks like something entirely different. Same thing with the floor outlet on the right. Some look very similar to the real thing. I think this one's pretty obvious to most. Materials also have symbols. You can tell in these pictures here, they're close in representation. So the sketch on the left shows concrete in a section. So if you were to cut through concrete, that's what it might look like. And sure enough, on the right, the actual picture shows something very similar. Other material symbols are listed here. Glass, metal, sand, stucco. Each have their own designated symbol. Number 4 is notes. So these are written details to explain the section, component, or process which would be problematic to draw. So you can tell by the level of detail in the picture on the right how difficult that would be if it was drawn within the full set of the building, the full scale, the full picture of the building. So what we have to do is we have to draw smaller, more detailed pictures, and we have to label them using notes. So let's review. Construction prints are a set of instructions we need to build a structure written in the language of construction. The 3 basic views are plan view, elevation view, and section view. There are also 4 basic elements of construction prints: lines, dimensions, notes, and symbols. Earlier in the video, we talked about 3 basic views in construction: the plan view, the elevation view, and the section view. As you might imagine, though, there are quite a number of other views we should consider. The first one being what we call the site plan. And the site plan shows the relative location of the building you're going to build on top of the lot or the dirt that it's being placed. In this picture, we can see there's a private road that wraps around 2 sides of the proposed residence lot. We can also see other details such as the rainwater storage tank, a proposed well, and even the proposed septic tank. In this site plan, we can see even additional detail. Predominantly, what jumps out at you is the landscaping, the plantings that surround the building. You can see the trees, the bushes, the lawn, and such. The next plan typically seen in a set of construction drawings is the foundation plan. And the foundation plan is the component of the building that supports all structure above. And the foundation plan typically details concrete or some other masonry product to really hold up the remaining part of the structure. On top of that foundation plan, it's quite common to see what we call a floor framing plan. And this is where the concrete or masonry transitions into wood, typically found in our building projects here in the United States. And after the floor framing, then of course we build the walls and eventually get up to the roof framing plan. And here you would see the rafters or the trusses detailed out in the right locations. You might also see a slope of the roof. Going into the house, we see greater detail about the electrical plan, where outlets, switches, lights, and all other electrical type of materials will be placed. And in some cases, as you see the dashed lines on this print, you can see how the wire is intended to be ran. The general direction anyway. Interior elevations show us such things as cabinet, or in this case kitchen layout. We can see the kitchen cabinets, the refrigerator, stove. The elevation picture in this case shows us that we have a multitude of different type of siding material. We have brick, we have typical 4-inch siding, and then we have what we call a shake siding above in the gable part. Lots of detail found on this exterior elevation. Furthermore, we see detail plans such as staircases. The picture on the left shows material used for a set of stairs. The pictures on the right show detail for the foundation wall system. It shows a drainage tile and the rock that covers up that tile. The bottom right shows another set of stairs, in this case showing the height and depth of each step. As we know, there are 4 things included on construction prints that give the detailed instruction on how to make it. We talked about these 4: the lines, dimensions, symbols, and notes. So there are other blueprint components to consider. Here's a page called General Notes. And here you're going to find an overview of codes and other requirements in the front of the plans that detail things specific to that location. Title block, as we discussed earlier, can also give you information about who drew it, what company, the date, revision number, sheet number, very important to locate where you are in the set of the drawings. And some sheet number indexing has reference to other things, such as, in this case, sheet number A is a category for architectural, 4 is a group number, 1A is a section, and page is 7. Not all plans are drawn with this indexing, but quite often you see this on commercial drawings. We talked about dimension lines before, and so we see a standard dimension notation up on the left, on the top, and on the bottom we see an offset dimension notation. Break lines are when a detail is too big to draw the whole thing on one view, so we insert these 2 squiggly lines to represent that there is more material there. We're just showing the beginning and the end. The bottom one, TYP, you see this quite often on drawings, references that this is typical, where the components remain the same through the length and can no longer be scaled. Legends, such as the electrical symbol legend, much like the symbols we saw before. It's a list defining what each symbol and abbreviation means. Schedules, this is something new here. This dictates what materials are where. So for an example, the first one says symbol, it has a mark, and the mark on the plan might say BR1. The product is brick, and the specification, the note part, says that it's painted. A luminaire schedule is for the lighting, and that would tell you more specific information about each particular light fixture. For an example, we could give it a fixture type of an L1, and we would know through the schedule an L1 means that it's a recessed linear, 3000K LED, and so on, type fixture. The window schedule can call out where the window is at, basement, first floor, the type of window. Here they've designated them A, B, C, D, E, F, G, D, and T. The sill height, so that would be the height off the floor, so above the floor, and any other remarks about that type of window. Slider, fixed glass, egress, transom, and so on. The window legend can tell us a little bit about the swing of the window. Does it swing out to the left? Is it a double hung window, slides up and down, a slider? And then of course all this information can be inputted to a schedule that would list things such as the dimension of the door or window, the width, the height, how many of those. Something to note over on the right where it says 3, 4, 6, 8. Windows and doors are often called out in these 4 numbers. In this case, the 3 is the width of the window or door in feet. The next number is in inches. So this would be a 3 foot 4 inch wide window or door. And then the next 2 numbers are the height in feet and the height in inches. So 6 foot 8 inch. So the door itself is 3 foot 4 inches wide, 6 foot 8 inches tall. Section symbols. As we discussed earlier in the video, we saw where the building had a section right through the staircase. On the floor plan, it would designate symbols like this to tell us exactly where that section was cut. So the symbol that you see there with the circle, the line through it, and the triangle shape above it, we can see that that would be wall section number 2, and we can find that section detail on page A4. Here's a picture of exactly how that would look. On the left, the smaller picture shows that's a section symbol, and it cuts that foundation, that concrete there at that point, and it calls out that we should look for section detail number 3 on page S0B. So we go to page S0B and we look for detail section number 3, and there we find it. Door symbols, some are pretty obvious. This is just a right-hand swing door. We can tell it's right-handed because that's where the hinges are at, standing from the outside of the door. So if the door opens away from you and the hinges are on the right, it's a right-hand swing. If you're standing outside the door and it swings away from you to the left, that would be a left-hand swing. Other type of doors, as we can see, flush or panel doors, bifold doors, French doors, and of course sliding glass door. Windows, same type of depiction as doors. The difference obviously is the wall typically continues through and the window sits off the floor. Other material symbols, we can see wood, brick, stone, metal, like we did earlier, and the architectural symbols for them are on the right. The insulation symbol that you see in the bottom left-hand corner looks like a series of figure eights drawn throughout in between 2 lines. And that represents that there's insulation within a wall or other type of assembly. So this concludes the basics of print reading. Our next set of videos will focus on the Creek residence, a residential ranch plan